Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, righties and lefties. Today I got a real interesting topic for you. Of course, you saw the title of the video, and the reason for this video is because earlier this week, Rolling Stone published an article titled, "Are We Witnessing the Fall of the American Empire?" In this article, Rolling Stone and their authors decided to try to compare US today to the Roman Republic and say that we are going to fall just like the Roman Republic fell. This is not a new comparison. This is certainly not the last time they're going to make this comparison. But in this video, I'm going to dive over all those talking points and we're going to analyze it and figure out what's really going on. So, this is center point, and here we go. Alright, now before I get into all the nitty-gritty details of this particular topic, I just want to say that I'm going to love talking about this. I, like a lot of guys my age, think about the Roman Empire all the time. Now, I can't speak for them, but I think about the Roman Empire almost every other day. In fact, back there on my wall, normally, I have this guy hanging up there. Now this, for those who don't know, is a Roman gladius. And I love this thing so very much. And it's my belief that with all the knowledge I've accumulated over the years, and with a little help from AI and all the research that I put into this video, I think I'm fairly qualified to talk about this subject. So actually, let's get into the details of what we're going to be talking about today. As I said, this is not the first time that the media has brought up this comparison, nor is it going to be the last. Just this year, other than the Rolling Stone article, we have articles like these. Trump is no Caesar, but the Republic is collapsing. Or this one, America is in a late Republic stage like Rome. Ominous. But this is a phenomenon that's not new, but it is something that is oddly unique to when Trump is in office. When Trump is in office, many articles just like these keep coming out. I have some further examples from Trump's first term. We have articles like this one. America looks like Rome before the fall of the Republic. Or this one. Is this our moment of decline? Lessons from Rome before the fall. Okay, so let's be clear. This is not a new phenomenon. The media has been making connections back to the Roman Empire for a very long time. They love using this analogy. And the reason for it is because it ropes in new audiences. People who are more focused on history, article titles like the ones you're about to see, catch their eye and get them to read the article and allow the media to push whatever narrative that they are trying to push. It is pure manipulation, in my opinion. But I decided, for the sake of this video, to go back in time and look at what articles were being published in relation to this analogy during the times of different administrations. So, this is the list of articles I found that was published during the Bush administration. Now, what you'll notice here is these article titles have a very clear focus on Roman imperialism, connecting it to Bush's imperialism, or American imperialism. You have titles like America's Virtual Empire, or The Dream of an Empire. And it's very clear that the media was trying to paint Bush as an imperialist. Now, let's fast forward a little further to the Obama administrations. Now, this is the list of article titles that I found during the Obama administration. Now, this list, you'll see, is fairly similar to the last, but there's a key difference. In this example, they're talking a lot more about the fall of the empire, and that's really interesting, the fall of the empire. But once you look further into it, you find that they're actually talking about the fall of the imperialistic aspect of the empire. So they were trying to paint Obama as not an imperialist, and that's a very key point. Furthermore, they make connections between Obama and Roman emperors, or Obama and Cicero, trying to say his rhetoric skill is equal to the great Cicero. And that's very interesting. But let's fast forward even further to the Biden administration. Now, during the Biden administration, there weren't very many articles making this connection, but I found a few. Here is a list of those articles. Now, I have to say, that first article on that list made me laugh out loud. The title, Biden, the Augustus of Our Time. It is purely laughable, and the Washington Times should be ashamed of themselves for pumping out a title like that. For Augustus was the greatest Roman emperor of all time. He instituted the Pax Romana, 100 years of peace for Rome. He was successful in everything he did, and trying to connect that to the Biden administration, it's purely laughable. It makes no sense, and the Washington Times should be ashamed. Now, let's move back onto Trump. Now, I've already mentioned a few articles, but here is a continued list of the articles I found relating to Trump. Okay, so there are two things you should notice when looking at this list and remembering the articles in the beginning of this video. And the first thing is the media is not talking about the Roman Empire anymore. Now they're talking about the Republic. This is a key difference, because the Roman Empire lasted 500 years or more after the fall of the Republic, but the Republic was the stage of Roman history where they were a democracy. And so the media is very clearly making the point that American democracy is going to fall under Trump's watch. At least that is what they're arguing in connection to the Roman Empire. The second thing is the connections between Trump and Julius Caesar. There are tons of articles out there making this connection. And of course, Julius Caesar is the man who was accredited with the fall of the Republic. And so again, the media is pushing the narrative that Trump is going to destroy democracy. And they're using the Roman Empire to make that point. But I figured, let's actually dive into one of these articles. So I'm going to dissect the Rolling Stone article in a second. But first, I want to give you a quick summary for the multitude of reasons why the Roman Republic fell. Okay, so I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible because there's a lot of history I could go over here. But I'm going to point out the three key reasons for why I believe the Roman Republic fell, and there's a certain amount of history that backs me up on this. The first reason was the centralization of power into a single figure. This started long before Caesar, probably with Sulla, and then Pompey exacerbated this problem, centralizing the courts under his authority. And then, of course, Caesar continued the tradition, and so that centralizing of power is a key reason for why the Republic fell. The second reason was the vast amount of corruption which spread throughout the Roman Senate, and all these officials became corrupted. There was bribery, threats of violence to push forward political elections and such. Corruption was everywhere, and this can no clearly be demonstrated in when the Senate issued an arrest warrant for Julius Caesar, who had just declared his candidacy to run for consul, which is equivalent to, say, a president in our terms. But the Senate issued an arrest warrant to a candidate running for office. And this was the final straw of corruption which really broke the Roman Republic. Now, the third reason, which is also very important, is mass public unrest. There were questions of citizenship when it came to the conquered peoples of the Roman Empire, and of course there was economic inequalities, gang violence which spread out throughout the city, gangs controlling certain areas and such. And this violence, this public unrest, was the third reason why the Republic fell. Okay, now I could go on and on talking about this period of history. I love it, and of course, there are many reasons for the fall of the Roman Republic that I have not mentioned so far. But let's dive into this Rolling Stone article, because this is the key reason for what inspired me to make this video. Now, I will note that the person being interviewed, the writer, they are a historian, and so they do have some history backing them up, but I wanted to analyze their points to actually see what arguments they are making. But let's start with this quote that they started the article off with, which really sets the tone and tells you what they believe. And this quote says, "In 2025, it's clear to Duncan that the American empire, which has dominated global geopolitics for the last century, has passed its zenith under the Trump administration." Clearly, they're trying to set the tone where they think Trump bad. That's like half the media articles these days. But alright, let's actually move into what points they are making in relation to the Roman Republic. Now, their first argument that they bring up is the concept of economic inequalities, which led to public tension. Now, of course, as I already stated, this is a very true point. I mean, 100% accurate. Economic inequalities led to public tensions back then, and they are leading to public tensions now. And so that's a very valid point that he makes. Now, the second argument that is brought up is the issue of citizenship. Now, the author here tries to draw a connection between the undocumented immigrants in the U.S. and the citizenship question in ancient Rome. This is completely disingenuous. It doesn't even make any sense if you really analyze it, because the citizenship question in ancient Rome had to do with conquered peoples. It wasn't a question of immigration. It was a question of integration. See, Rome had conquered a lot of lands, some in the Italian peninsula, and of course everywhere else, and they had to figure out how to integrate those people they had just conquered. This is not the same as today, where we are dealing with unvetted immigration. That is a different issue that we are talking about, and so I find this argument to be completely disingenuous. Now, the third point that is brought up, and that relates back to Rome, is that politicians in Roman society were generals of armies. And so, because they were generals, if they ever lost an election, they could use their army to attack the capital. And so, politicians had militias. Now, this is true, 100% true. That's what happened with Sulla. He lost an election, he attacked Rome, and he conquered the city. 100% accurate. However, this author tries to draw the connection between that and January 6th, which again, completely disingenuous argument. Not to mention that only like 4 people died during January 6th, not to mention the 300 plus federal agents that were in the crowd and all this new information being released, not to mention all of that. But to compare that to an attack on the city of Rome, that like what happened with Sulla, where thousands died, this author is making a very disingenuous argument, comparing an event which, not a good event, but claimed the lives of 4 people, all of them protesters. They're trying to compare that to a literal Roman army sacking a city and killing thousands of people. It doesn't make any sense. So that is the third argument that this author makes. Now, if you actually want to read this article, you're more than welcome, but the rest of this article is honestly kind of pointless to read, because basically the author's next few points are talking about how revolutions need the elite's support, which is true. And of course, Trump didn't have the elite support. That's why January 6th didn't work. And then, of course, he goes on to say Trump is a cult-like political leader, and he almost fantasizes about what would happen to MAGA if Trump was killed. And then he goes on to talk about how a tyrant like Trump puts people who are completely unqualified in all these positions. And I mean, honestly, it's not worth reading the second half of this article. I mean, he blatantly calls all Republicans fascist and such, and so it's very clear the narrative that this article is trying to push. And so I don't think we need to go over all of those points, but just to summarize this, I think that this argument being made in this article is completely disingenuous. This author, while he may be educated, is politically captured. And the Rolling Stone is pushing propaganda down our throats, and they expect us to take it. Now, in my next video, I'm going to actually go in and I'm going to talk about the fall of the Roman Republic. I'm going to draw the connection between Trump and Caesar because you know what? Trump might be the new Caesar. And I'm going to go and explore that whole story, draw the connections. So I hope I'll see you all in the next one.